And good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whatever time it is that you inky savages are joining me for this week's episode of the PenBoyRoy Pentertainment podcast. So I got to squeeze in sponsorships in here somewhere. So there's some reads, I just don't have them with me. But what ended up happening was I ended up coming to Puerto Rico for a spontaneous vacation. And I decided I wanted to do a recording here in Puerto Rico because it's really nice. But before I get started with the topic for this week, and this week's topic is actually about journaling. And the topic is something that came up because of my last episode I was talking about. And people were making comments about how and when someone should or shouldn't journal, which was very relevant to what I was thinking about. Somebody made a very important comment about when you're journaling, it can't be something forced or a chore, right? So I think that's true. So this week's topic to me, and I feel like it's important to discuss, is can journaling be a burden? Has journaling ever been a burden for some people? If you don't feel like journaling, do you journal? If you just don't want to do it that particular day, what then? Do you do it anyway? So I want to discuss that. But before we get into the discussion, I want you guys to make sure you check out my sponsors at Goldspot Pens using the affiliate link in the description below. Make sure you use that affiliate link and use coupon code STEWIE at checkout for an additional savings on most of the products on the Goldspot website. As well as don't forget about our sponsors over at Luxury Brands of America. They are right now at the DC Pen Show doing their thing, showing off their product, including Waldman pens, including all kinds of good inks by Colorverse and the new pens by Endless, the Endless recorders and the cases. They got a lot of cool stuff. Also, don't forget about GirologioMade.com, the website for the best pen cases in the history of pen cases ever created, ever. So, check out more detailed description for the links, affiliate links. And when you're on the GirologioMade.com website, make sure you use coupon code PenSavage10 to get an additional savings, 10% in particular, off all the products on the GirologioMade.com website. Now, on to this week's episode. Can journaling be a burden?
The PenBoyRoy Entertainment Podcast.
Stay savage.
So the reason why I ask is because I got this journal. Okay? I bought this journal after I had to put down my cute little baby Stewie because he had heart disease that was undetected and then heart failure. So that whole experience kicked my ass and I didn't know how to cope with it. I still don't. So all I'm doing all the time is, I'm just exercising, working out, training, writing stuff down. So my intention was to start this journal, and I'm not sure what it was. I think it was to write letters to Stewie. I know he's never going to read them because he's a cat, can't read, and because he's in heaven now. But it was just also to be honest with myself, write down things that made me sad, things I regret, maybe things I could have done better, things I'm going to do better, talk about my day, whatever. So I did that for a couple of days, but then I find that after a couple of days, I feel like maybe it connected me too much with what made me sad, or it was hard to sit down and start journaling. It was just maybe more difficult than I had expected it to be. So after a couple of days, I just didn't. And then I was looking at some of your awesome comments on the YouTube and then the podcast, and some people were saying, hey, if you don't feel like it, don't do it. I'm going to take this out of the sun because I feel like my phone's going to overheat, and as a result of overheating, it's going to give me issues. So some people were saying, listen, if you're not feeling it, don't do it. Don't force yourself to do it, because by doing that, it becomes a chore and it defeats the purpose, which I think was a very valid and good point, right? Like, I don't want to make it a job, and I don't want to do it because I have to. You do it when you feel like it. But then what I found ended up happening was, not only did I not do it on days I didn't feel like it, I just fell out of the habit of doing it. So almost a month went by and I hadn't done it. until a couple days ago when I got to Puerto Rico and I brought some pens with me. I'll tell you what pens those are. But not having done it for almost a month started to make me feel bad also. So part of the reason I felt bad was because, I got this notebook that surprisingly no one's made fun of me about. It's got cats on it. And I dedicated it to my cute little kitty. So by not doing it, does that mean I am not like dedicated to Stewie or the memory of my kitty? So I started to feel guilty for not doing it. Then it made me think, oh my gosh, like I'm neglecting to do something that I intended to for the memory of my beloved pet, and I'm neglecting it. And then it's making me think, what did I neglect when Stewie was around? And then I started feeling bad. I wonder, when it comes to that kind of mindset, is it a healthy thing to journal then? And if I don't, am I a failure on part of my process of journaling or dedication journaling? Right? So like, it became a burden. I'm not really sure what to do about it. Because if you honestly ask me, when do you feel like journaling? In light of this situation, I just don't feel like journaling at all. And it might be because it's, makes me feel sad or whatever the situation is. It's not easy. And then if you ask me, well, if you only journal, or if you tell me you only journal when you feel like it, and then what happens then if you don't feel like it? Then you just lose the habit and the hobby of journaling, right? Like it becomes something that's not a regular part of what you do. I'm not sure how to use this gimbal, but that's not what I wanted. I wanted to journal, and I want it to be something that, I do on a regular basis. That's part of my daily routine and stuff like that. But it's kind of tough to do that when, it becomes something that just gets in the way, right? And I don't want it to be something that gets in the way. I want it to be something that's helpful and productive. But how much barrier do you push past so that it is helpful and productive? And at what point do you accept the fact that you don't feel like doing it? And how long do you accept the fact that you don't feel like doing it and not do it before it just becomes something you don't do anymore? I'm wondering how it is that you guys deal with that or feel about that. Like, do you guys ever journal even though you don't feel like it? Do you guys ever feel tired at the end of the night? You had a long day, and maybe you would normally journal something, but you just don't feel like it that night because you're too pissed off, because you're too fucked up from the day, because you're too agitated or just too sleepy or whatnot. You know what I mean? So maybe that's one of those things that happens. And then if that's what does happen, what do you do the next day? I don't know. I kind of feel like, tell me if I'm wrong. I feel like you have to kind of just push past whatever barriers and get it done. Otherwise, if you accept, hey, this is not something I want to do today, and you make it okay not to do it that day, then it just becomes a regular thing that you don't do day in and day out. And then it stops being a habit. It stops being part of your life. So, I don't know. You guys tell me, what do you think in that situation? How do you deal with it? Or are you even dealing with that at all? Is journaling one of those things that you enjoy so much it doesn't matter what you go through, come hell or high water throughout the day, you'll just get it done? I don't know. And then I think about other things, right? Like, I like martial arts and I like training. Come hell or high water, I'll do that. It's definitely a mechanism for coping for me that is really helpful. Throwing punches for an hour, punches and kicks for an hour, gassing out, training really hard. But for some reason, I think because journaling is more connected and attached to emotions, whether they be good or bad, I think it's just a little harder to push past mentally to do when, you feel like shit, I guess, right? I'm not sure. I could really use your guys' help in how you feel about this or what you're thinking about this. So forgive me for the camera moving around. I got this new gimbal by DJI. I'm not entirely sure how to use it, but it's a nice day today. I'll talk more about this later. But right now, I got all my friends and my wife over there, and my wife's wearing a green bikini, and it looks really good. And she wants me to hang out, but I'm gonna come back. So to you guys, it's just gonna be a quick cut of the video. I hope the audio is good. I'm using this lav mic that I think is really nice. But before I go, I do want to share with you which two pens I brought with me to this beautiful resort in Puerto Rico. If you're watching, I brought these two with me. I brought some, like these days I've been really into snap caps or, quick draw pens. And I had this pen lying around and it's been in my collection for a really long time. And I just never found myself using it, which is really odd because it's a really decent pen. I got to review this pen. It's a cross Townsend fountain pen with a stainless steel nib. It's all chrome. And I also have, of course, with me my Lamy 2000, an extra fine. It's not really an extra fine by anybody's standards. It's more like a standard European medium. But I love the way both pens write. It's filled with Malibu Blue by Monteverde. Nice standard blue ink. It does pretty well on like cheapy paper that feathers, because this notebook here is a notebook I got on Amazon, and the only reason I got it is because it's got cats on it. And like I said, it was dedicated to my little Stewie. But I do intend on coming back to you guys, so just bear with me. I'm gonna finish recording this episode in a little bit. I just want to take a little bit of a break. In the meantime, well, like for you, it's just going to be a cut. It's going to be a different scene somewhere else. I might be in my room. Who knows? I might be in San Juan. I might be at a restaurant. But it was nice to talk to you guys off scene, not in the Pentertainment studio, but here in Puerto Rico. It's really nice. We're feeding lizards, but I'll talk to you guys soon. So I'm back at my studio office back at home. I didn't really get a lot of screen time or recording time while I was in Puerto Rico, even though I wanted to, because the scenery was really nice and everything was really awesome. But I want to go back to what I was talking about in regard to, is journaling a burden? So I only journaled once. I only made one entry in my journal while I was on vacation in Puerto Rico. And that entry was on, Saturday, the 3rd. So after that entry, the following day, I did some recording for the podcast on a Sunday. I can't remember if it was a Sunday or Monday. No, it was definitely a Sunday. And I felt good about the fact that I did eventually get some journaling in, because I felt like I was just betraying my goals or neglecting my goals by not journaling. So what ends up happening is I end up relying on the desire just to find a reason to use fountain pens to end up journaling. And then it becomes like the gateway. Like I brought with me, I showed you guys earlier when I was at the pool, I brought with me the Cross Townsend fountain pen. It's a steel nib. I really like this. Very smooth writer. It has a little bit of drag. Even though it's smooth, it's like what it would feel like if you took a toothpick and slid it across a brand new jar of flat peanut butter. That's kind of what the Cross Townsend feels like. And it's a really wet writer too. This is a fine nib and it's really, really wet. I thought that it would saturate or feather this cheap cat notebook that I have that I got in honor of Stewie. It didn't. I was surprised. It didn't bleed through or anything like that. And of course I have the Lamy 2000, and this one is a little bit drier, even though it's an extra fine and is thicker than an actual Cross Townsend fine. Anyway, I brought those two pens because these days I have been obsessed and using a lot more snap caps, for lack of a better term, because this one here, the Cross Townsend, doesn't really snap, kind of clunks when you close it. I mean, I still like it though. It's a cool looking pen. And the Lamy 2000 kind of just, I wouldn't call it snap. It kind of just snips closed. I don't know how to describe it any better than that, but I love both of those pens and I did want to use them. And I'm always looking for reasons to use my fountain pens. So I kind of use the fountain pens to get myself back into journaling. But then the obstacle of getting myself back into journaling is when you're journaling, you're supposed to, I'm saying the word supposed to, but the intent is to be honest with yourself, to be honest with whoever you're dedicating the journal to, whether it be yourself or a loved one or anything like that. And then what I'm finding is the obstacle is that level of honesty sometimes is hard. It's really hard. It's really hard to sit down and truly be honest with yourself and write it down. Write what's in here and what's in here. And I'm, for anybody not watching, I'm pointing to my head and I'm pointing to my heart. Being honest about that, putting that on paper and then seeing it yourself. Being that honest about yourself and how you feel about something, or maybe guilt you feel or sadness that you feel, is really hard. That was an obstacle for me. And I've been doing that intermittently in this cat notebook. And I'm finding that every single time that I do it, it's like a punch in the balls for me. And it takes time for me to recover from it. And, you know, you think every time you do it, you're going to recover from it faster. That's not the case. It doesn't work that way, for me at least. I don't know how it is for everybody else, but for me, that's not how it works. It just seems like a nut punch every single time. But that's okay. I kept using the word, you're supposed to do this, you're supposed to do that. And I realized I was saying that, and it reminds me of a conversation I had with my very good friend Lyman. He was carrying around a notebook, the same style of notebook journal. It has like the lock on it, but his is like a dark green and it has embossed on it like the moon and the sun, and it's really cool. And he started using that journal also himself. So the reason he started using it, well, rather the reason he didn't want to use it is because he felt the same way I felt. When you journal, you're supposed to have this notebook, and then when you open it up, it's supposed to have entries, and it's supposed to look neat, and it's supposed to be structured, because he, like myself, have like OCD tendencies, and that OCD tendencies means every entry in the journal should be looking neat. Everything should be concise, and everything should look right. But then he just started his journal, and he just decided, you know what? He's going to carry it with him. And wherever it is that he has an idea or a thought or an opinion or something, anything, he's just going to open it up and write it down on the page. And that's it. He's not going to hold himself to any sort of structure. There's no rules. There's no unwritten rule, or there's nothing that says a journal has to be X, Y, and Z. It has to be in orderly fashion. It's not a log. It's not an accounting book or anything like that. You can do whatever you want with it. It doesn't have to be coherent. It doesn't have to be chronological. It doesn't have to be anything except for whatever it is you feel at the moment. So I've been thinking about that conversation I had with him a couple of weeks ago, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you know what? I'm going to try to do that. I'm just going to open up the journal, and whatever I'm feeling and thinking, I'm just going to throw it down. That makes it, I guess, a little easier for me to journal, because maybe even though the book is dedicated to Stewie and his memory, maybe I don't have to make every single entry about how sad I am about his passing. Maybe every single entry doesn't have to be how I feel. Or maybe every single entry doesn't have to have something to do with the passing of Stewie. Maybe it could just be how I like the tree that I saw this morning, or maybe it could be how I spontaneously had a dinner, or it might be a sketch. Because one of the things that I really loved about The Last of Us Part 2 was Ellie's journal. Ellie carried around a journal with her all the time, and it was completely random. She would write a little note to herself, and on the next page have a sketch, and then on the page after that, there would be like, I guess, clues to something she saw, or something her girlfriend Dina said, or something that she was mad at Joel about. If you don't know what this game is, it's the greatest and best game ever created in the history of PlayStation games ever. And then it makes me also think of Nathan Drake from the Uncharted video game series. He also had a notebook. It wasn't as diary-ish as Ellie's. His was more like a whole book of like clues and sketches and survival techniques and things that he sees throughout his journeys of like finding bad guys and killing them and stuff like that. So I think that what I liked about Ellie's journal was, even though it was a complete and total mess and things were not dated or nothing was chronological and nothing was neat, it was in fact genuinely authentic. Sometimes I look back at my journals that I had. Some I finished, some I didn't finish, and I have them here. And when I look at them, what I think is, when I look through the pages, is this is not genuinely me. This is me trying to make a journal and make it look the way I think a journal should look. But I don't think a journal should look any way other than a reflection of who you are. I'm a messy person. At the same time, I have OCD. I'm sporadic. I have ADHD, and I'm a child at heart. I'm extremely sentimental and emotional, but at the same time, I'm very, I guess, what would be the opposite of sentimental and emotional? Cold? No, I'm not. I'm definitely not. But when I look at the journal, I don't see myself in that journal. I don't see something that is authentically myself in that journal. So I'm going to run with this. I've been thinking about it since I last recorded while I was in Puerto Rico. I'm going to run with this. I'm going to take my journal, and whatever happens to it, happens to it. Whatever I open up and do on that page, whether it's an entry talking about how I feel, or a complaint, or just a word, or a doodle, or an idea, like maybe tomorrow I'll get a new iPhone 15 Pro Max case, or maybe tomorrow I'll go to train and try not to get beat up or something, whatever it is. I want it to be something where I look at, I can recognize myself in, which I don't think I can do with any of the journals I had before, because everything I had before was about kind of fitting this concept that I have in my head of a journal and making that like Tom, he has journals, and when I look at his journals and what I see, what I've seen, it's just this gorgeous, intricate, metrically symmetrical art. But that's him. That's not me. I should just do me when it comes to journaling. I don't know what that looks like. I guess I would have to fill out this journal as honestly and as authentically as I can and see what it looks like at the end. Who knows what my reaction will be? I might be like, holy shit, this thing is a friggin' mess. Never do this again. Find another reason to use your fountain pens. Just don't journal because it's just disgusting. Or I might be like, you know what? That was fun. I'm not sure. We're going to have to find out. But I want to be able to get into a mode and mindset of journaling where I'm journaling because I feel like it's something that helps me, and no one else, just me, helps me get my thoughts organized, helps me cope with things, helps me think about things, makes me laugh, things like that. I just want to be able to take my personality and genuinely translate personality traits onto a piece of paper and fill a notebook with it. Maybe if something tragic happens and that journal is left behind, maybe it would offer comfort to my wife or something like that. Who knows? You never know. But I want something to be authentically myself and without restriction of structure or format. Like, that's the words I was looking for earlier. Structure and format. So I'm not going to consider structure and format, and maybe that'll help ease the burden of having to journal. I don't want it to be because I want to use fountain pens that I'm going to journal. I want it to be because I find it to be a release or a venue of expression, I guess. And for some reason, every journal I see on social media, whether it's Sky Bambi or Carrie Bullet Journal or Tom, I look at these things and I'm like, wow, these things are just, they're like literature. They're like classic literature compared to my coloring book filled with crayon. You know what I mean? But I think it's time for me to, instead of journal because I want to use fountain pens, journal because I want to journal because it definitely does something for me, helps me and helps me get in touch with myself. Because I think as of recent, I've been a little bit maybe out of touch with things and myself. So I'm going to give this a shot. No structure, no format, and maybe that'll ease the burden of having to journal. I mean, there are going to be those of you who say, hey, if you don't want to journal, then don't journal. There's no like, you have to journal. But I think that when it comes to dealing with traumas and tragedies and sadness and grief and coping and stuff like that, I think journaling is something that is necessary and extremely helpful. But I think you have to do it the right way. I know that a lot of people out there journal. How is it that you journal? What do you do? What is your process? What is your mindset? How do you get your personality onto the page? Or do you use the journal for that? Do you use your journal to take who you are and mirror it onto paper? Or do you use your journal for things that have nothing to do with you? That could be it, right? Some people could be using their journals to as a cookbook, like ideas to write down cookbooks. But the thing is, in that case, though, that's a journal that's helping you reinforce your creativity when it comes to cooking. So that would also be a reflection of who you are, I would say. For me, I guess because everything has to be, I guess, structured and have a format, that structure and format has taken away my ability to journal authentically and be authentic. I think that's just maybe how I grew up, maybe because of school, maybe because of my profession, maybe because of training and martial arts. Maybe that's why I'm like that. I don't know. But I got to figure out a way, and I'm going to try to figure out a way of removing structure, removing format, removing just the need for organization when it comes to journaling. And I'm going to just go for it. I don't know what that's going to look like, and I don't know what that means for me. Like, as a matter of fact, I'm thinking when I'm done doing this recording, I'm going to just open up the journal and do something in that journal. I don't even know what it's going to be. Is it going to be writing? Is it going to be doodling? Is it going to be scribbling? Is it going to just be, who knows? I don't even know. So let me ask you guys something. When it comes to journaling, how do you guys do it? What do you suggest for someone like me who is scatterbrained 110% of the time? And the only way not to be scatterbrained is by collecting everything and putting it into a structure and a format. But that structure and format kind of steals the soul of why people journal. So why do you journal? How do you journal when you do journal? Do you make it like a bullet journal? Do you just write like old school Dear Diary type shit? Or do you just combine drawings and scraps of newspaper articles and pictures and things like that? Like, how is it that you guys do it? I'm really curious. Not because when you tell me and put it in the comments, I'm going to copy it, but because maybe ideas will help unlock ideas in this little noggin and help me discover my method of journaling. Do things have to be perfect for you when journaling? And I mean that in the sense of, do things have to be perfect? Like, you have to be at your desk. It has to be the right temperature in the room. You have to have your favorite pen and your favorite ink. And you have to have your coffee sitting next to you with the right amount of cream. And that's what I'm talking about too. And also, like, not just physical settings, but do things have to be perfect inside your journal? Like, if you're writing and then you decide, oh crap, I don't like anything that I just wrote. What do you do with that? Do you rip out the page and then start a new page? Or do you just cross it out? Or do you just leave it and then write yourself, hey, this shit that I wrote sucked. I'm going to just scrap everything I just said and start it over. Does your journal have to read like a novel? Because as far as I'm concerned, my journal, for some reason, I need it to read like some sort of a novel. I need it to be just right. And I think that mentality creates a burden for me that doesn't need to be there. I think, maybe I'm wrong, who knows? But I think that's how it is for me. I don't know. I got to think more about it. Maybe I'll journal about that. But I do want to know where it is that you sit when it comes to journaling, and how it affects you? Or is it just something that doesn't affect you and it only helps you? Is it something that is a burden? Is it something that's not a burden? Share your experience of what journaling is like. I'm genuinely curious. For me, like I said, everything has to be structured and organized, and I want everything to be perfect. And sometimes it's hard for me to do it because of those things. And also being in touch with yourself is difficult. And then on top of that, in order for me to get into the journal, sometimes I got to get a pen that will motivate me to start writing in that journal. How is it for you guys? This week's going to be a short episode, but I do want to thank my sponsors, Gold Spot Pens and Luxury Brands of America. And make sure you check out the Made by Endless cases so that you can carry around your journal and your pens everywhere and without burden journal with your pens, but not because of the pens, but because of journaling. I want to thank you guys for listening or watching. I'll be back next week. Love you guys. Be well, be safe.